primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast Super One. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
and today is episode 227 of Podcast Super One, youtube.com/@2for1studios. It's the best place to consume all the content. And if you didn't know, listeners, and let's be honest, you probably did not, we are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located at 4047 East Hill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas. There they have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course, special guest appearances throughout the year.
Kapow.
Kapow. Daniel is 227, and
Indeed.
I thought I had a feeling how this podcast would go, and then I got a text from you about a couple hours ago, and I
Yeah.
was like, oh. So if which is awesome and exciting, and maybe not awesome for other people, but if our listeners don't know yet, we are talking about Skeleton Crew,
Yes.
and we're talking the first 4 episodes, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, first 4 episodes. So I guess the first, I think is there 8 episodes or is there 6
I think
episodes?
that's right.
Okay.
There's already, I think there's 8 total.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can look into it real quick. Well, I'm going to give my general thoughts. I think you might
Yeah.
have a little bit more umbrage. I can say that a couple things. One, I do like it. Like I'm not hating the show. I'm not watching it and feeling like they're destroying Star Wars. You know, it is interesting because we have like pirates introduced to the show, and instead of like Star Wars pirates, you're just getting like what pirates have been in cinema, at least on the
Yeah.
Disney side for the last 20, 30 years or more, just like the stereotypical pirate stuff, which I get that, and I see the fun in that. And so we have some interesting blends of genres here. But again, ultimately, I'm not offended by it. And
No.
I'm enjoying it. I will say every now and then I'm checking my phone during these really short episodes. And there's this weird thing too, where like we've talked about what's the balance here of having the movies versus the TV shows. And do we want the shows to connect to the larger universe and push this larger narrative, but then they'll F it up because it's a TV show and they're not used to the format or whatever? Or do we want something that is more standalone, not connected to larger events, and then, might be a little more filler content? So we've been seeing that balance played out with the MCU, and we've been seeing that balance trying to be played out on Star Wars as well, which is interesting because I don't think we've had a single movie of Star Wars come out since the era of Disney plus Star Wars. I think
Mandalorian
Mando
and Grogu will be the first ones.
yeah, I'm saying I think
Nice.
Mando season 2, I think Mando season 1, that was dropping as Rise of Skywalker was in
because
theaters.
it had the whole like force healing thing
Yes.
in it, right? And that set up what happens in
So we haven't had a Star Wars movie since then. So anyway, there's this
Yeah.
weird dichotomy here. I'm not offended by the show. The Acolyte, while it is really damaging to Star Wars as a whole in terms of just some of the canon and just what it means for other things down the line, it's got a lot of cool lightsaber fights, so it kind of grabs your attention there. So anyway, there's this weird push and pull, and I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping by the end of the show we'll get some more clarity and we'll get
Yeah.
like, okay, is this something that I want to revisit every now and then? So far, it's not something I can just see my picking up again next year. Like I would need to be like, I need to binge Star Wars, I have to watch everything
Yeah.
for whatever reason. So that's where I'm at right now. So where are you at right now with Skeleton Crew, Daniel?
Well, I want to preface this by like, I don't want to sit here and yuck anybody's yum, right? Like, I agree. This show is not offensive. This show actually is pretty high quality to the degree it's trying to reach. I don't think this show's very ambitious, right? I don't think it's that exciting in general of a concept. And I think that's where my issues come down to, is that I just can't get invested into it. I'm just like, the feeling I keep feeling while I'm watching this is I don't care. I don't care what's happening in the Star Wars universe right now. I'm so detached. I'm so confused about. There's so many storylines going on in so many different timelines, decades apart, that I'm just like, I don't know what the main thread of Star Wars is right now, or what's happening right now, or how this could connect to that. Like it just feels like a mess. Just as a franchise, as a world. And because of that, it sucks, because I agree. I think this show's doing things well. It's doing a good job of achieving what it's setting out to do, right? Again, I don't think the stakes are very high. I don't think the core concept is that interesting as a Star Wars story. It's fine. It's fine. It's just like, okay, fine. This is some more lore filler. Okay, fine, cool. But it's just like, I'm trying to will myself to be invested in this universe, and I just can't do it. And I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know exactly what that is, right? I don't know exactly if that's just that there's no main thread right now. Like I think I said in the text, like the only thing, I may not have, but like the only thing that has gotten me to care about Star Wars in the last, like, since the sequel trilogy was Andor, right? Like, now listen, I enjoyed Grogu and Mandalorian. I really enjoyed that. That was fun. But to me, that show never really achieved what the emotional depths it should have. Or like it never, I don't know, like it kind of fell off into this vague Disneyisms of how they're doing Star Wars now, right? And I just think it's just, I don't know. It's frustrating. It's frustrating as a Star Wars fan, as a self-proclaimed Star Wars fan, someone that grew up on these movies, and most of the time I was probably playing pretend. I was probably playing Star Wars. Right, as a kid, if I was jumping on the trampoline, I was probably being a Jedi in my head. You know, if I was doing this, it was all Star Wars based. I loved the universe, and maybe it's just me getting older and needing more from something to keep me engaged. Maybe I need just more, like, characters that I care about. I do care about Andor, but he's dead. He's dead. You know what I mean? Like it's just like there's not an active thread in this universe that is being like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens next. Like, we've got Ahsoka, it's okay, but I'm not like dying to see what happens next. Also, it's kind of already been in the comic books. It's like they're taking stuff from that we've already known. It's like Star Wars isn't doing anything new anywhere, it feels like. It's not pushing boundaries. It's not taking the universe in exciting directions. It's just kind of plodding along, trying to find this weird balance of keeping hardcore old school fans interested and keeping it as broadly accessible as possible so everyone will watch it. And it just feels I'd almost rather be doing anything else. And I hate that. Like, again, it's like, this isn't a bad show. These aren't bad actors as kids. They're doing a kind of a good job of getting that Goonies type feel. But it's just like, I just don't care. And like that, I'm not happy about it. Again, if people are loving the show and loving Star Wars for what it is right now, more power to you. I'm happy about that. I don't ever want to say that someone finding joy in something is wrong because I can't find joy in it. But I don't know. I'm just at this point where I'm like, I mean, you got to wow me to get me interested in Star Wars. You got to do something bold. You got to tell some risky, or just tell some good stories. We won't say risky because The Acolyte was plenty risky. Anyway, I know that's all to say is I feel like I'm just like this, you know, I feel like I'm the worst person to review this show right now. I'm just like, I have this like, just, I don't know. It's like I've been hurt so many times by Disney. I'm just not willing to even give them the time of day to hurt me again unless I feel like there's really something special on the table. You know what I mean? And Andor is that. I mean, again, Andor had some of the best writing we've seen ever in Star Wars, and also just like had some of the best like monologues on TV ever. You know what I mean? Like, Andor's giving me something that is like, yes, it's Star Wars, but you're elevating it. You're just telling really good stories with really great actors. I'll be there for almost any genre of show. I'll be there for that, right? That doesn't need to be Star Wars for me to be interested. And it just, I don't know. I just feels like they just slap Star Wars on it, and I don't know, want me to like it, and I'm just like, I don't know, do something, like it's like do something funny, do something cool. Get me interested by how cool of stories you're telling, not because there's a lightsaber and a reference to droids or something, Anyway, like I said, I don't want to be just a negative Nancy about this. It's just, gosh, it sucks. It sucks to be this at this point in my Star Wars fandom.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like to me you're echoing a lot of the things we've both been saying for a long time recently, and we said a lot of these things are an acolyte. We said these things during Obi-Wan Kenobi, and at least those were characters we cared about in Boba Fett, but they just kind of shit the bed overall.
They took characters we cared about and made me care about them less, and that was like that's like, how could you do that?
That's worse than Skeleton Crew's doing right now, I think.
It is, because again, Skeleton Crew's going for something, and it's achieving that. It's just like, this universe has not given me a thing that's been half interesting since what was Andor 2020, and we know that's only got one more season, and that arc's over, so it's not one I'm just waiting to see the second half and watch good TV. I'm not like, can't wait to see what Andor's up to next. You know what I mean? It's like, and so...
in defense, I say I do like The Mandalorian. I agree. Season 3 definitely left something to be desired. I just rewatched it. I binged it on a drive, watched the whole thing in 5 hours on a drive back from Arkansas to Oklahoma. And it was a little better watching it the second time because my expectations, but it helped watching it all back to back to back, because one thing I always felt through season 1 of Mandalorian was that I loved that we were getting a cool, Mandalorian. I love the Grogu character and like the mystery of that. And of course, it's Yoda and it's Grogu and it's cute and like what's going to happen. But my complaint through season 1 and 2 and into 3 was, although I love the setup, it did feel like it was really kind of slow and kind of dragging along some of these concepts, and sort of, every episode's 30 minutes. And you're like, oh, it's all I got, which that's a better place to be than like, I don't want to be watching this anymore, wanting to watch it next week. I remember we were like feverishly like, oh man, tonight's Mando, like what we're going to do.
You're right. And I don't want to discredit that like in the moment, especially at that time when we hadn't had any, like the last thing we had of Star Wars was Rise, or it was The Last Jedi, which was like the great divide of Star Wars fandom. Like, it's like the nuke that went off was Last Jedi, and then nothing was ever the same. And so there was just this, I think, just dissatisfaction, and then we got this cool show, and I think part of it is too, they were doing things fun with practical effects again, and it was kind of westerny and all these kind of things, and that was really cool, and a part of Star Wars we hadn't dove into before. But I also think there was this expectation that at some point you were going to make us like deeply care for these characters, like that it was going to be like a character drama. And I don't think Mando is a character drama.
I'll argue that you do care about them by the end of season 2. Like, I mean,
you care, but like
when you passed off Grogu, that's a pretty emotional moment. And also, it does help that Luke is there. I think the work was a little undone in season 3. By a little, I mean a lot, because now the characters are kind of stuck where they are at. And unless we jump like 500 years in the future, Grogu is always going to be a baby.
Right. Yeah.
I
guess what I'm saying is like, it was a great experience at the time, but it's not one that's really stuck with me, because like at the end of the day, it was cool Star Wars moments. I didn't like, I mean, I guess maybe I'm holding up this against like the wrong things, but I'm thinking of shows like The Last of Us or Chernobyl, or these shows where it's like, you remember the characters and what they went through and their journey and their ups and downs and their heartbreaks and their triumphs, because it's all about that. And like Mandor and Grogu is a cool show. It has got fun action. It's got fun sets. It's got fun moments. And yes, by the end of it, you do care about the characters, but it's not in a way where like, I know them and I know what you're saying.
I know what you're saying there. And I think the big thing you're trying to get at is you want your characters to suffer. Like, you want them to suffer.
Maybe that is.
In Chernobyl and The Last of Us.
Interesting. I want them to, and usually suffering is interesting.
Of course, yeah, but you want to see them at their absolute lowest, and it's hard to do that with The Mandalorian. Star Wars is a fantasy. Yeah. So it's kind of always the good guys always win, and they only go so dark because it's Disney Star Wars. Even like the darkest we ever got was Revenge of the Sith, and even then, that's not that dark. I mean, compared to other things we're seeing today, maybe 20
but
years
it
ago.
also felt more realistic in the way that Andor feels realistic, where the corruption's everywhere. Like there is a much more gray area. Even if yes, there is light and dark, there's a gray area. Like the Jedi fucked up and became warlords. Like you know what I mean? It's more
Well,
interesting. It's, a
it's
more
funny we're
realistic.
saying
world.
that. It's funny we're saying that because in the Acolyte, it does. There's a lot.
That's
there's-
just bad storytelling.
It
I don't
is
care
bad
how
sto-
cool the concept is. If you
I
can't tell
know.
a good story,
I know.
Sorry.
I'm just saying
I hear you.
that was them trying to do the thing we're talking about. What we want, but really failing spectacularly.
Trying. Yeah.
Well, they were. Yeah. Well, you know.
I'm not
sure
going to say
that-
the creators weren't trying. It's like it felt like a false try from a Disney perspective. It felt like Disney pretending to try to do something risky, but then maybe you're right, just utterly failing, just
Well, they're just
completely falling on its face.
just they got the wrong person to do it. I mean, that was just.
Maybe that is.
I don't know Leslie Headland. She might be a really sweet person in reality beyond all this stuff,
Yeah.
but she just, in my opinion, doesn't understand what Star Wars is, and or what makes Star Wars cool. And
Yeah.
so yeah, you know, I just want to kind of go back to I understand what you're saying. I don't know the cure for this other than what I've been saying for a long time is that we jettison past Rey, we jettison maybe
Yes.
Grogu is a young man for a couple hundred years in the future,
Yes.
and he's a supporting character, kind of like Han is, you know, in the original trilogy, or Leia or Chewbacca or something. And you're saying, and they've done the legwork of caring about that character throughout the TV shows, and it's Yoda, basically, essentially. So I think that would be the best path because there'd be characters, hopefully, that we have not seen in extended canon, like Thrawn, which I am excited about that because, you know, even though I
Who
have
did you say?
Thrawn, even though I
Thrawn,
have
sure. Yeah.
even though I have, you know, read the books or audiobooks, whatever, for the Thrawn trilogy, I still think it'd be cool to see that character in live action and do live action things. But I would like
I
to
agree.
see new Force abilities or something beyond the Force, you know, new lightsabers, which, you know, I get it. How many variations can you get? But it's sci-fi. We can think of some cool stuff. And it is a hard balancing act. You have to have what feels like Star Wars, sci-fi, but kind of retro, but also got some new futuristic ideas in it, but not too not too crazy.
Yeah. You know, you're right, and that brings up an interesting topic of discussion of what is Star Wars, because I don't
Yeah.
think Disney knows. I think Disney has an idea of it. Like, so even one thing I will critique this show about, and it's not a thing that to particular to Skeleton Crew, it's a thing across everything, that now Disney, I don't know when they did, but they were like, we can't do CGI anymore. Everybody's got to be a puppet. And like, to the point that it's consistently like immersion breaking. When I see a wolf man and he looks like an animatronic from like Chuck E. Cheese, you know what I mean? Like it's just like
can't.
CGI the mouth, CGI the mouth. Like keep
No.
everything else the same. Like just make it real, make it feel
the
realistic.
mouth.
Make it
Maybe.
feel like it's like an actual thing that exists in this world and would move like a thing if such a thing existed in this world. Like to me, that's just it's like, yes, it's like nostalgic, but it's also like, but that was also the best they could do back then, and we can do a lot better. We can combine these things to make it. But to me, it's like that's like a perfect example of Disney getting the wrong idea from certain information. Like I think what if I'm thinking about what Star Wars is, at the end of the day, it's kind of an aesthetic. It's not much maybe bigger than that, right? It's grungy sci-fi. It's mystical realism, like space wizards, essentially. And
I think that already goes way beyond just aesthetic, but go on.
well, sure, but like what I want is I just want a fantastic fucking story in the Star Wars universe. That's what Andor is. Andor's not doing anything new. Andor's not addressed like yeah, that would be cool if we could get new force powers and lightsabers and they wanted to expand the lore. Sure. But like all I want is you to tell the best possible stories with the set dressing of Star Wars. Make your heroes Jedi, or at least one of them. Like it's just like to me, it's like it's not much more complicated than that. And I think that to me is where it feels like Disney just like focuses on the wrong. They get so caught up in these little details of, oh, no, we can't use too much CGI. Well, that's not what people, yes, that was a complaint, right? For the sequel, for the prequel trilogy. But it wasn't so much that like it looked too realistic. It was just, it didn't feel like the grungy Star Wars that we had back in the day. The Alien 1, Alien 2 type of vibes of sci-fi. You know what I mean? Where it's dirty and grungy and not perfectly all slick and stuff. And so like, to me, it's like, it continues to feel like Disney just doesn't get it, doesn't understand the IP, and doesn't, I mean, to me, that's where all the money is too. You just have to tell amazing stories and everyone will love the characters and love Star Wars again because it's set in Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like it just, I know it's not that simple. I know it's not, but to a degree, it seems like they've overcomplicated it, what Star Wars is to Disney.
I mean, to me, it feels like Ahsoka is what you're talking about if Ahsoka had
HBO level storytelling, yes.
HBO level storytelling. Because to me, you're getting some good lightsaber fights.
You're right.
And you're getting some, I thought, interesting things that's like poking at the lore. Like, oh, we're getting some answers about lore that tie into some old Rebels and Clone Wars stuff that Filoni was toying with. Just the pacing of that show. And Ahsoka was, her
characterization was
her characterization was absolute, cardboard. It was, and it's not Rosario Dawson's fault. It was just like, she had like almost didn't emote very little.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, even when she had like made that change to like white Ahsoka, where she's, you know, supposed to be happier. It just wasn't, it didn't have the charm of like an Oscar Isaac or even a John Boyega or, she gets to the
even
shit.
Daisy
Ridley. She's great if the writing's good.
Mystery of Qui-Gon Jinn. Like Qui-Gon Jinn emoted very little emotion, but like he was such an interesting character because
That's
like
my boy.
You never knew, like for one, he was always disagreeing with the people that were above him, and that just he's like, no, you're wrong. I don't care that you're the council. Fuck you. So it's like but he's so stoic. I mean, he's like a classic stoic Jedi that's always saying the right things.
Well,
but he's
there's a way to do it. But they absolutely ruined that soul in Acolyte. Oh. But they absolutely ruined that as
with the plot of the show. Yes.
With the plot of the show and some of his character
It had nothing to do with him, honestly. It just had
I liked him.
Else.
I liked him until the back half of the show where they were just like character assassinating him.
And then they go
plot.
back into all the flashback stuff.
We literally had an episode. It was a full flashback, a break, and then another flashback episode, just the same flashback, but just a different perspective. A whole episode, crazy.
It's like the creator had just watched Rashomon for the first time and was like, "Holy shit! Does anyone know about this movie?" I'm kidding.
Well, anyway, I think like they keep touching upon things, and the only thing so far that's gotten close is it needs to be a mix of Mando and the Acolyte, where we're getting some of the quality in terms of pacing. Like I complained a video about it being too slow, but it's like at least like it's cut quickly. I say slow as in things aren't happening plot
does not happen very quickly.
Yes. Yeah. Like like episode 1, he like goes to the place. Episode 2, he's like trekking in the desert. Episode 3, what I mean, like that kind of slow. Yes. It's it's complicated, but we got on this larger topic, and we have to wrap this up kind of soon because it's a smaller episode today. But I think Skeleton Crew, like I hear you. I don't think Daisy Ridley's film, if it ever gets made, is not what you want. I don't think
unless they just knock it out the park. Listen, I want good stories. If you can tell one with Daisy Ridley, give it to me.
Sure.
If you can't, move on. I mean, like that's the thing. I don't even. It's like there's my bias. I don't feel like I have bias to a particular storyline, maybe the Acolyte, but like other than that, like just in terms of like what's been happening, I'm like, yeah, okay, but I think honestly it's just been execution has just been beyond hit and miss. It's been mostly misses with a few surprise hits in between is what it feels like, or a big miss with a moment in it that almost makes you feel like it's good, or almost does something. But you're right. I think it is like, it's just, there's nothing that's driving this universe forward. Like there's no plot, there's no characters, there's no big thing happening. Like it just feels like I mean, even just, I mean, Outlaws, Star Wars Outlaws, that was set. That was a fine enough game. I didn't finish it. I didn't love it, but it was fine. Was set like, I think right after Empire Strikes Back or in between. Like this one is set. When is this one set? I don't even know when this was set.
It's after Mando season 3 because if you remember,
Okay.
the pirates in the first half of season 3.
Yes. Well, but at first I didn't know if it was the same pirate. I thought
Well,
he's just
or
a
there's-
race of person.
Yeah, it's that one guy who he doesn't have a big role at
I
all
know
in Skeleton Crew. He's just,
I-
he's just
I-
always around.
I just thought it was like, well, part of it was like, surely he's not the same one. They're like a race of people. There's more than one in the
I think it's supposed to be the same one. Yeah,
Okay. Well,
I think
yeah,
so.
I did recognize the type of. At least I was like, oh, we've
Sure.
seen him before.
Yeah. And the only reason I know that is not because I'm like, that's the same guy, but because they told us that in press briefings.
Sure. Okay. There you go.
That's
And
that's
so-
how I know that.
So
Yeah.
that's occurring after Mando season 3. But then we've got James Mangold developing a movie about the origin of the Jedi, and it's just like there's no clear plan. It feels like there's no clear path. It's just like let's just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks.
Well, Filoni wants to. He it's his character Ahsoka. He wants to stay with that character.
Sure.
He wants to finish her arc, and he also wants to
You're right.
play. And he wants to play in Return of the
lore.
Jedi area because that's the best area, which is only like a year or two removed from Empire. So I mean, it's like that. It's which is also only a year removed from New Hope. So that is like peak
Yeah,
Star Wars
you're right.
area, right?
You're
So that's why he's doing that is because he likes OG Star Wars and he's trying to also it's his baby, and so he's trying to finish
Sure.
her arc and
Sure.
also give us more lore. But I would like it if we got past this.
I agree.
I don't even want Daisy Ridley's kids, like great grandkids. I want to go way farther past that
500
shit.
years. Yeah.
Again,
exactly.
the perfect ideal place, and might be blasphemy. I think it's not. I think they should reboot Star Wars.
Here's
Just
what they
reboot
should
it.
do. I've got the perfect idea. They should go 500 years in the future, and the Yuzhan Vong have taken over. The universe is enslaved, and like the Jedi are forgotten, and like they have to find, like they have to, like there's never been a real Jedi, and we don't have Obi-Wan hiding on Tatooine or Yoda. No Jedi for like 300 years, and they got to figure out maybe. But you're right. Like some kind of fresh
But I mean,
start like that is
you
what
could
they need.
still you could still have a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It's just a different galaxy. There's a lot of galaxies out there that's
Right,
not
sure.
our galaxy or the Star Wars. We don't know what the Star Wars galaxy is called, I guess. But like,
Yeah.
do we? But so it's theoretically it's in our time. Just a long time ago in
Yes.
relation to Earth. So I think we could just go different system, different galaxy, and
Sure.
different rules. The Force works
Yeah.
differently there. You
You're
know what
right.
I'm saying? Like gravity works differently there, so the Force works differently there. Whatever.
Sure. I mean,
You
you're
know?
right about Filoni, right? Like he is doing probably the most interesting thing, but it is got a lot of help. It's got a lot against it, right? That the
Well, he
fact
just-
that the execution wasn't perfect on the first season, and there's a question of can he tell as good a stories in live action as he can in animated. Then
you
there's
just want like a Lawrence Kasdan who wrote Empire. I
Yes.
think he also helped write Force Awakens. You want him to sit in a room with Filoni and say, "Hey, what do you want to do
Yes,
idea wise in your
yes,
characters?"
yes.
And then let Kasdan write it with the help of Filoni, but let Kasdan write it,
Sure.
and then get someone like Favreau to direct it. You want
Yes.
you want all that. You
Yes.
don't want Favreau, which he's not bad.
but
you don't want him.
he's kind of generic writer.
Well, you don't want him
Yeah.
doing, the plot like he's been doing
Yes.
Mandalorian, which again I like season 1 and 2. But you want Filoni doing the plot, you want Kazan doing the writing, and you want Favreau doing the directing.
Yes.
That's what you need
Yes.
here,
Yes.
And so I think
You're
that's where we have the right cooks, but they're all cooking the wrong meal.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, man. And it just, I think the part that again makes me feel like I don't want to get invested in this universe is because it doesn't feel like there's a foreseeable end to the cluster. Fuck.
Sure.
Right? Like it's not like maybe the new Daisy Ridley trilogy will just be surprisingly perfect. And then we'll all have something to be excited again. And then like
It's just hard for me
or
because you have
maybe-
characters that are tied. When you see her, I think about
I agree.
other movies. And so I
Again,
think that's
we're
a
talking about
problem.
what Filoni's doing. The things that are set against him, he's dealing with a time that we don't know a lot about, but most of us hate what happens directly after it. And
Yep.
so you don't want to mention that too much because everyone will just get mad again. And then, like we said, we already know how all of these plot threads will kind of eventually play out. We already know the Empire gets killed. We already know Thrawn dies. We already know all of these things. There's no mystery to it in a way.
Yeah.
And so it's just, it's
I agree.
Again, I want to say it again, like Skeleton Crew is not a bad show. Skeleton Crew is one of the few shows that Disney has made that knows what it wants to be and is succeeding at doing that. And I want to give them props and credit for that. This is a problem with the franchise for me. It's not a problem with this show in particular. It's just that, like, when I'm disinterested in the franchise, this is not a show that's going to pull me back in. It's fine, but it's not made for me, to be honest. It's made for a much younger audience, and it's just not enough to keep me glued.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say before we hop off here is that I do have a few complaints about Skeleton Crew. To me, I don't know who our protagonist is in the show. I know you can argue it's a
Wim?
mass.
It's got to be
Yeah,
Wim.
but it can't be though. Like that's who you think it's going to be, but he makes really poor decisions, and he pushes all the responsibility onto the girl who's she's good.
But I'm assuming that's the arc, right? Is that he learns?
Well, we're almost done with the show. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like if it is the arc, then they're not doing that very well so far.
Sure.
And other than we are getting some backstory with the characters, but it doesn't feel like enough for me. And also, I think a big thing too is like some of the kid stuff, like looking at it 30,000 foot view, you're like, oh yeah, that's how kids act. But then like getting really close to it, and you're like, kids don't talk like that, or like
No.
they don't do that. Like it's like adults writing for kids. And like
It's exactly what it feels like. It feels so like, compare it to like Stranger Things to me.
right. Yeah, and well, here's the kicker. Every kid in a TV show is always written by an adult, but just some of
Sure.
them have
Some of
that
them
inner
don't
child
remember how
still.
to talk like a kid. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Don't
yeah,
remember
yeah.
what it was like to be a kid. I mean, I've got a 10-year-old, and these kids I think are around that age, or supposed to be. And I'm like, no, this feels, and I think to a degree that feels like genre, because like the kids in the Goonies didn't really, they acted older than they were to a degree. The kids in Stand By Me act older.
Kinda.
I think they pull it off better. It feels more natural, but like,
Yeah, that's my point. Is that if
and
you're
I
if
agree.
you're using the Goonies to Stand By Me, that's the gold standard of
You're right.
how
You're right.
kids should act in movies, and they're not quite there. And so
No.
I think
And again, I think Stranger Things is a great recent example of a bunch of kids at the same age range that feels so much more real and natural.
sure.
And I get they come from the real world. It's easier to imagine what their lives were like in the 80s than it is on a fictional planet.
And
But
they
you're
got
right.
twice the length. Like every episode's an hour versus
Yes.
maybe they weren't in the beginning, but they are now, I guess.
Yeah, and I
Um,
will say that I just like all the kids felt like in some ways like cliche, but like the love child of Geordie LaForge and Storm from X-Men, I just could not jive with her look.
Is this who is this?
The
Pfizer girl?
white-haired
Oh,
Pfizer girl,
Cyclops.
Geordie LaForge.
Yeah,
Well, I
she
said-
feels more. She
yeah,
feels more
yeah.
Star Trek to me than Star Wars.
Yeah, and she just feels especially not realistic to the child. Like she's like the most unrealistic behavior because she's like so suave
Yeah.
or whatever. Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just, I agree. Wim is maybe the most realistic because he's so annoying.
I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
and keeps like, honestly, him continually shucking responsibility is like the most realistic thing any of these kids are doing that
Yeah.
like feels right for their age. But yeah, I agree. I mean, like the main girl that's just like Han Solo, but a curl, and you know, just like
I don't love her either. I mean, I don't really
No,
love.
she's-
No,
I love
the one I
it.
like the most is the elephant because he's
he's
innocent.
cute.
He's
and
cute and he's
funny.
innocent.
Yeah, no,
And
I agree.
it's-
But he does.
Yeah.
It does feel like they've got Dumbo the elephant as one of their crew, and like, you know,
It
it's
does. Yeah. 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 Of course, you have to have a cute Star Wars character now because of Grogu. And they're kids, so it makes sense.
Sure.
We're about to do a Star Trek episode soon because I've been on a Star Trek kick.
Star
And I've-
Trek.
Star Trek, and I
haven't
watched
watched
I watched the first few episodes of the OG series. I've
Okay.
watched some Strange New Worlds. I've been doing like a deep dive into lore, into just other things. Like one of the guys online, his name is Robert Meyer Burnett. I watched on the John Campea show. Do you know him, Robert Meyer Burnett?
I don't know. I don't know the
Well,
name.
he
but I
ended
have seen some of
well,
them.
he's a like probably one of the aficionados for Star Trek, and he actually was on the team. Him and the guy who did all the special features for seasons 1 through 7 of TNG. And so
He
he
did
interviewed
what
like
for them?
special features for like the DVDs and Blu-rays and
Oh,
stuff.
that's cool. Okay,
And so like he worked on that like a 3-year project for Paramount or whatever.
interesting.
And so
That's cool.
anyway, I've been kind of diving into that a little bit more.
There's some really great lore in the Star Trek universe for sure.
Yeah. Well, maybe another episode because we got the odd
Let's
here, but how can our listeners write into us?
Listeners, you can write into bit.ly/241mail and let me know how wrong I am about Star Wars and Skeleton Crew. I'm sure, I have no doubt that Joel Williams is an avid fan of this. And again, I don't want to steal
for
that
sure.
joy from you, Joel. This show in some ways feels like it was made for you. And I love that. But, you know, for everyone else out there, tell me how you're feeling about Star Wars and Skeleton Crew right now. Is it scratching the itch? Does it have you wanting more? Do you give a shit anymore? Let us know. bit.ly/241mail.
And if you can't hit us up on our daily, find us in the comment section below. I still am sick, apparently. YouTube.com/@241studios. Last tidbit, Daniel. You know, the idea of the flailing Jedi who's like past his prime and he's, you know, needs to pick up the lightsaber again. This show is where you do that. And they didn't do it. Yeah. I don't think Jude Law is that
They
character
hinted
at all.
at it, but he's not. Yeah.
But this is the show where you have the kid who's looking up to someone who's a Jedi, and like, you know, that's what they were trying to do in Last Jedi, but it didn't work because we're not kids anymore. Also you're doing it to Luke Skywalker and a
they
lot
did
of
it
other
on
things.
like just like, let's just end the movie with a child looking up at the sky. Like it just feels so like the most cliche
But there's
way
a
to try to do
version of
that.
this where it's a swashbuckling adventure where you have a kid looking up to someone who's past their prime.
Or
You know what I'm saying?
the main pirate is that guy. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
like he's a lapsed Jedi. He, you know, is disillusioned with the Republic and the Empire, thinks it's all a bunch of bullshit.
Well, I think you're describing Jude Law. I think he might have been a Jedi or something at some point. I don't think he was a Sith. I think he was a
no,
Jedi.
if he was a Jedi, but yeah, he also feels like he quit when he was like a Padawan.
Yeah.
But what I want is the old master who's given up the way because
Sure.
he is disillusioned with both sides of the power struggle and is like, doesn't matter anyway. And like that kind of character and getting to have to like draw the goodness out of him. That's
Now you're kind of describing Balin from Ahsoka, he is Sith.
yeah. Gosh, he was the best part of that show. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
He was the
R.I.P.
best. I know. Again, it's like everything that was. It's like, man, the best part of
I
that
love
show
him.
is not continuing. Just, I mean,
Ray Davidson's a treasure.
in some ways, like all respect to him, I kind of wish they'd recast just to keep an interesting character. In
I
the
think they
universe.
will. I think they're going to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I think that's the plan.
It shouldn't be too hard to find someone that looks pretty similar to him.
No, I don't think so. I think we can do it. They should catch Mark Hamill. That's no big deal. The fans would love that.
Let's just pull a Marvel and cast Mark Hamill as a completely different character, but not explain it.
Yeah, who cares? Why not at this point? All right, Daniel. Well, it's fun talking to you about it. We didn't really get to the nitty gritty of Skeleton Crew, but I don't think we needed to. If you like it, good for you. If you don't like it, you're with Daniel.
Yeah.
I'm kind of neutral on it at the moment. It's not offending me, and I will finish it, unlike Daniel. My name is Donovan Thompson,
I'm Daniel Wingfield.
and we have spoken.